Hello. There we go. We're in. Welcome to a special World of Tanks North America museum stream. I'm Cabbage Mechanic. Tragic Losses behind the scenes running the show. We're super excited to bring you a Q&A and a special visual demonstration with the Museum of American Armor. They are located on Long Island, New York in Plainview. They're going to be reopening up here at the end of the month with appropriate COVID social distancing restrictions, of course. Very excited about that. But for today, they have some special vehicles to share with us and our in-house historian, Nicholas the Chieftain Morin. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the channel with them, and we will be introduced to Kevin Carroll, the Director of Community Affairs for the museum. All right, making the swap. Hello, Kevin.
Hello.
Pleasure to see you. What a magnificent tank you have there.
Well, thank you. Go ahead.
Tragic, are they vertical? We have we just got to get your picture sorted out here. It's,
okay.
It looks good. You're sideways though. You appear to be standing on the wall.
It's been known to happen.
There we go. All right, thank you very much, cameraman. All right, Kevin, we're just saying hello to our audience here and letting them know about your museum, and you're going to be opening up soon, and you have a lot of amazing vehicles, many of them that run. So we're super excited to see what you have to show for us.
Yes, welcome to the Museum of American Armor from hot and hazy and humid Old Bethpage, New York. We're so glad to have you guys here. I'm standing in front of three of our newest acquisitions. They are all static acquisitions presently. They of course will be in the queue for our restoration in the coming years. We're standing right now in front of a tank that I find particularly interesting. It's kind of World War II in microcosm. Most of your viewers probably recognize it as a very early M4A1 Sherman, and a giveaway for that, of course, is the cast hull, the three-piece mission cover, 75 millimeter gun, and this is one of the first tanks that the United States fielded in North Africa. Soldiered on to an Italian campaign. This tank is particularly interesting because it's almost so. Here we have one of the very earliest tanks that the United States fielded, but we'll want to look at. Mark, can we take a walk over here? So we're going to take a little different aspect of this tank. And you're going to see that even though it was in service during the very beginning of the war, it was also to be in service actually beyond the end of the war as we know it now. For this tank is not an M4A1, that's how it started life, but it's an M42b1, and wait for it, an E9. So this tank was modified to be a flamethrower for the invasion of Japan. It was brought back here to the United States, thoroughly modified so that the flame gun was integral to the turret. The suspension system, so giveaway, you can see how it's been modernized. The suspension system is a later, the heavier duty bogies, along with the trailing arms. Of course, the M4A1s had the return roller, the bogie. And interestingly enough, perhaps I moved a little bit too early. Mark, can we come back this way and take a look at the rest of that suspension system modification, which was the E9 modification? And what happened is, I'm sure most of your viewers know, the entire track and suspension system was moved away from the hull several inches, I think 6 inches, 7 inches, and that enabled us to have
Looks like we may
higher
have
flotation
for a minute.
And the whole idea behind the M42b1 was to have a dedicated. Okay, we lost the feed.
Oh no, we're back. We're back. Tragic. There we go. All right, we have the chieftain joining us now. Just as we get further into the details on this awesome flamethrower equipped Sherman. I'm sure you're quite familiar with it, Nick.
Actually, not so much.
Oh, well, if we can answer any questions for you, Nick, please fire away. We were talking about the modified suspension system It was designed for the invasion of Japan. Which thankfully didn't happen, of course, but
there's not many of them. There's another ET9 on public display down in New Orleans at the National World War II Museum. If anybody's down that neck of the woods, and it's easier to get to than New York is. But I don't actually know really where you'll find many others.
Well, yeah, of course, this is the 75th, coming up on the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, or VJ Day. Of course, we're past VE Day. Going to land in Operation Coronet in Japan. The high sign here, Nick and Zach, we have thunderstorms moving in, and we really want to, you had mentioned before that we are, and actually our claim to fame here is most of our, if not all of our vehicles inside actually operate. And we have 3 of them right here that we want to demonstrate for you and your viewers.
Sure, would love to see it. Hopefully the video feed is going for us. I see looks like a nice vehicle just sitting in the back as well there.
We have in front leading the parade, just firing up now, is our M48, otherwise known as a Macaque III, in Israeli service, leading the pack. Behind that is a fully operational M18 Hellcat, and beyond him is our LD4. We're going to move these vehicles forward, get them closer to the museum. You guys can see them on the move and demonstrated in front of the museum area.
Hopefully the microphone will pick up the roar of that diesel engine.
Yeah, I think it'll feel a little bit closer to the other one pretty good.
All right, here's our M48.
Look at that.
So for those who don't know, the M48 is driven with a steering wheel. It's not tillers.
What we're moving in with our M18 now.
Always love a Hellcat.
It's nice that there are so many of them out there as well. I guess I should say, for those who are watching and they're worried about the quality of the audio and video, as we get closer to the museum building, it will improve. We were testing this out earlier.
Yep. I wonder if the storm coming in is having an effect. So.
That's possible.
We got a full deployment crew ready in the back of the.
If you haven't seen an LVT in person, they are surprisingly big vehicles. And you can see it even next to the M48 there, next to the Macaque.
Yeah, full time.
Small.
All right, folks, we're hoping to have audio back from the museum in just a minute. They are cut out right now. We are getting video.
So,
can you hear me now?
There
you hear me, Zach?
Coming back.
Okay. We're gonna shut these engines down and talk about the vehicles we just moved up.
So you got reenactors coming out as well. You've got quite a posse of reenactors available to you guys. I guess we'll talk about them when the audio clicks back in again.
There we go. Is that better, gentlemen?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Very impressive. This is what we love to do, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. Do you have any particular, you want to start on any particular one of these three vehicles?
Why don't you just go left to right? I mean, the LVT, okay. Again, it's not all that many out there, and you can have a good look at the tracks there to see how it gets propelled through the water.
All right, terrific. Yeah, interestingly, we're going to go inside, Mark. They would like to see the track shoe. We have taken, Mark, give you a good shot here. If you look, you'll see our audience that we have taken off our regular track shoes, or the track shoes that would have been on this vehicle. I'm going to get you one.
So you have.
Yeah, we have, Nick, because our forte is, our reason for being here is to actually have these vehicles move. And these are at that shape and that size to move water while this vehicle is in its amphibious mode. So every place you see one of these bar cleats would have been one of these. If I remember right, there's about 75, 76 on each side. They're held on by 4 cap screws. We took all these off. We put our swimming track shoes in storage. And again, the reason we did that is that these track shoes would be far too aggressive on our concrete floor or on our blacktop surface here. I'm sure some of your viewers, if not you guys, I'm sure you put your bike down on Dad's blacktop driveway at some point, and the kickstand dug into the blacktop on a hot day like today. And of course, that's what would have happened here, because we move these vehicles on a regular basis. We move them up to our adjacent county park, and that's largely a blacktop surface as well. So long story short, we had to sacrifice a bit of realism from a swimming mode so that we could actually operate this vehicle in the county park and also on our grounds right here.
Does she actually float? If you took her to Long Island Sound, could you be a new commuter?
That it could be, Nick. I know that the previous owner, Mr. Kevin Crunlin, their late Kevin Crunlin, had this vehicle in the water. The gasket, maybe our viewers, if you can move around here, Mark. You see our ramp is down. And by the way, that was one of the distinguishing features, of course, of the LVT4, the first of the LVT series that had a rear ramp. Instead of being just a big shoebox, or some people have described it as an upside down refrigerator, actually had a ramp so it could disgorge. You saw our armed Marines do that just now. We've also had a Jeep in here. We've had our M29 in here, but it seals right against this rubber gasket here, and it still seems to be in pretty good shape. We have the ramp 90% down. We have it secured with these chains for safety aspect. I just hit my noggin on the splash deflector here. My understanding is that when this vehicle was moving at speed, and speed with about 7.5 knots, maybe 8 knots, would kick up quite the rooster spray from those tracks that we just saw. And without this deflector, kind of gave away the presence of the vehicle rather readily.
If you couldn't see it already, if you hop in, you've got the firewall missing, so you can have a look at that radial engine that's powering it.
Please, Mark, their engine. Of course, that's a radial engine, Continental engine, 7 cylinders.
So it's the same as a Stewart.
Not unlike, it's a smaller version of what we have it. Yes, exactly, Nick. And a little bit the little brother of the first cousin of our Hellcat, which is just down the line. This vehicle has an armor kit on it. This little slabs of armor along the waterline. Also has the armor on the bow. And Nick, you were saying if you couldn't see this thing coming, you really had eyesight problems. In the Marines, of course, this was known as an LVT, large vehicle or landing vehicle tracked. The Marines, in their black humor, called it a large target.
So has anybody dared to bring an apricot onto that vehicle?
An apricot? Explain that to me.
Oh, no. Maybe any of your reenactors know about it.
Okay, we'll have to ask them.
It's a Marine thing. See if anybody there knows the problem with Marines and apricots.
I just lost you. Anybody know about an apricot? I'm getting blank looks. Just remember, we're all volunteers here.
Okay, so by tradition,
a lot of blank looks here.
By tradition,
yes, go ahead.
It's extremely bad luck to bring an apricot onto an American tracked vehicles, and the tradition started with U.S. Marine Amtraks in World War II. That in general have hated apricots. They're the forbidden fruit, or the A fruit. You're not even allowed to say the word apricot sometimes.
Well, we'll pretend like we didn't hear that then. But thank you for the information.
But,
so that's our LVT4.
So we'll move on then to the. I think the Macaque is parked next to it. Oh, actually, before you leave, have a look at your reenactors.
Yes, please.
Them out there, and you have access to a whole bunch of reenactors.
Yes, these gentlemen, we have a sister group closely related with us here at the Museum of American Armor. In fact, a lot of these guys are volunteers here too. But these gentlemen are with one of the premier living history reenactor groups in the metropolitan area, if not the state, if not the East Coast. They're with Long Island Living History Association. And these guys play all the roles for our armored infantry when we do our Armory Experiences, which we'll talk about later on. They're, of course, in Marine gear right now. And they also most of them do some Revolutionary War Spanish-American War. World War I is very big with these gentlemen, and we want to thank them. It's called the Long Island Living History Association, or LILA for short.
So can we go up and have a look at some of the kit that they've got then? Because
Sure.
yes, it's the Museum of Armor, but of course the armor are useless without the people that they're supporting.
For sure, both in real.
Carrying a Thompson submachine gun, M1A1, 5 caliber.
Uh-huh.
This was the standard submachine gun to all American troops a good part of the war.
Okay.
Dressed as a Marine, NPO. They wore a cotton herringbone twill uniform because it was tropics, it was hot.
Mm-hmm.
Canvas leggings, protect dirt and debris from getting in the tops of your boots. Standard web gear that the Marine Corps watch they carried, as well as the pack on the back. Carried all their clothes, gas. Probably used more like a haversack than the gas mask carrier itself.
All right. What are we looking at? Some
We need to get them a little closer, I think, to the signal.
Military in 1936, and it was the greatest fighting implements of World War II. My equipment is pretty much the same as Jim's, as a regular.
Except he's wearing a cartridge belt.
And,
Jim is wearing
anybody ever bring a flamethrower?
Nick?
Anybody ever bring a flamethrower to the reenactment?
we have a question. Any flamethrowers in our retinue? Any in our gear? Anybody possess a
we can
flamethrower?
only wish. They're a little pricey right now.
Okay.
But, we have a tank that kind of does that, but
That's
as far
right.
as personal gear, we would hope to maybe get one someday, but that's not
Yeah, I mean, you got a little different weapon. What are you carrying there?
the same rifle.
Oh, I'm all right. Well, camouflage helmet covers, right?
Like basic fan, and once they got into the Johnny cases, they flipped them.
Okay, that's a good demo. Thank you.
Okay. Can you zoom in on that real quick?
No, from experience, we let's get a. Can we get a close up of the helmet? The helmet line. I salute these guys for wearing their leggings.
Okay. Why don't
Do
we
that.
move closer to the Macaque? It might get us a better signal.
Okay, we're gonna take a look at the Macaque.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, we're here at the back. Are you with us, Nick?
Yep, we're here.
Okay, very good. I think you may know the story of the Macaque, this particular one, but this is started life as an M48, plain Jane M48, probably around 1953, 1954. After service with the Army or the Marine Corps, it was sold to Jordan under Military Assistance Program. And Jordan, your viewers may know, Israel at the time never left anything on the battlefield. They reused everything, they repurposed everything, they made minor modifications, major modifications, and this is one of them. The Israelis back end here didn't like the gasoline engine, which the United States had built the M48 with, so they replaced it with a big diesel. They didn't like the 90 millimeter gun. They wanted to make, the Israelis wanted the 105 millimeter gun to be, and I think to be really compatible with their Centurion tanks. So they replaced that. Essentially what they did was made the same modifications the United States was doing to make the M48A3. So the Israelis put this vehicle back into service with all those heavy modifications. They call it the Macaque III. And in 1973, it's down in the Sinai. And after the War of Attrition, which lasted several years, in 1973, October 1973, the Yom Kippur War breaks out. And the M48s that were raised in a counterstrike, including Ariel Sharon's use of the M48, this tank and several others actually came back to the canal after very, very heavy fighting, heavy losses on both sides, and western side, where we believe this particular tank was knocked out. And since we're right here This is where the vehicle was knocked out. Most people claim it an RPG. I know Stagger missiles were in heavy use at the time. At any rate, the projectile, some type of heat round, actually hits the towing pintle here and keeps right on going. I don't know if you can see that, but there is the penetration, just virtually the size of my thumb, a little bit smaller. Knocks the vehicle out. You can see some of the splash marks too on these taillight guards. Knocks the vehicle out mechanically. It's a kill mechanically. We're not sure what happens to the crew. Probably nothing good. And it lays in the desert for an extended period of time before eventually, through a series of restorers and different owners, comes back here to the United States and winds up in the Littlefield collection on the West Coast, the very famous Jock Littlefield collection. And of course, with Mr. Littlefield's passing, a large part, or actually all of his collection, was split up. A large part of it went to the Collings Foundation, the Heritage Museum up in the Boston area. But this particular tank came to us and is on long-term loan to us. We're very, very proud of it.
Kind of wrapped. That is amazing stand, but we have gone vertical again on the camera. I think when we were zooming in on the hole, it switched the axis on us.
Okay. So are you back okay now?
Yeah, the video's good. We're just vertical instead of horizontal again.
They're vertical instead of horizontal, our cameraman.
There
How
we
was
go.
that? Okay. Want to take a look at profile of this monster?
Yeah, it's you're going past the searchlight there as well. You have in the stowage position.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to-
xenon searchlight.
I don't think that searchlight was there when it was in California. You guys worked on it.
That's a good. This came to us. It was donated. Drop. Where the heck he got it, I don't know. Or
This storm is doing terrible things.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we lost signal again here.
All right, let's go close. It's always the case that these things work perfectly in rehearsals, and then all of a sudden, disaster in the actual display. But yeah, this M48, it came out of the Budge collection in the UK. Budge, that was a pretty big collection as well. Jacques Littlefield got a whole bunch of it, so I spent many hours crawling over this M48, and it's interesting to see where these vehicles have all ended up.
paint of the vehicle.
after the collection. Oh, we're back.
Tell us anything that. Oh, okay. All right. Did you drop out there? I was going to say we had our museum director Mark Renton. That we had an Israeli tanker in here, and he looked over the tank, and Mark asked him if we could do anything to make the tank more authentic, and he said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I can use this box 4. Good old toilet paper. True story."
We've had different systems like even living in tanker at the time. I imagine.
I believe it. I mean, so you got to go to the toilet somewhere. I mean, I've heard stories, people hanging off the side of the tank and they're evading Iraq or just
Answer the
using
call
bottles
of them on
instead.
tons of armor ahead of you.
Yeah. All right, so let's move around to the front and have a look at that 105 that the Israelis put on it, and hopefully a better signal.
Sure. Yeah, we're sorry for that. We're working outside platform for you with our Wi-Fi in there.
Yeah.
But there's the 105 that you had asked about, Nick. Took the place of the 90 millimeter.
So, with the external coaxial 50 cal as well, just for good measure.
Yes.
The Israeli back then the Israelis were putting caliber 50 on absolutely everything. So how much running does this particular vehicle get, as it's an Israeli painted, Israeli configuration vehicle?
That's a great question. We're primarily World War II centric, if you will, if there is such a thing. So we bring this vehicle out for special occasions, tanker weekend, when we bring out our entire track vehicle collection. So it doesn't see as much use as our World War II vehicles, like our LVT-4 and also our Hellcat, which is right behind us. By the way, weather is moving in on us, so if we could take a quick look
At the
Okay.
M18 and then put the roof on.
Yes. Yes, but our gentleman up top is acting as the lightning rod.
Do you guys have the canvas roof?
That helps.
We'll actually start moving this side. Out. Doesn't have, and we don't want it to get rained on.
I'm wondering if the noise of the engine is overloading the microphone, and that's what's cutting it
So
out.
it's happening. The M18, you hate to see it leave, but you love to watch it go.
Okay, so hopefully now we've kind of gone inside. It should hop over to the internal connection, which is a bit better. Fingers crossed.
I think that the storm was playing back with their signal there.
Yeah.
Are we better now?
We seem to be getting better.
Okay,
So
we're in.
who named the vehicle in Amazing Grace?
It came that way, Nick, with that name from the Danbury, Connecticut. We call it Danbury. Of course, it was the museum. Museum of Southern Connecticut or Southern New England. We call it Danbury just for that reason. But that's how it came to us. And actually, when we first got it, Nick, it was not running. Danbury asked us to, our great mechanics here, to take a look at it, see if they could get it running. That's when Danbury was still a going concern. So we had it on short-term loan. And sure enough, we did get it running. And unfortunately, Danbury, as you know, closed. So now we are the proud owners of it. But this crew that you see getting off here, Mr. Mike Justin, who just drove the vehicle. This is Steve Bennett to Mike's left, to our right. And Hank right here. They crew this vehicle on a regular basis, and they have lovingly restored this vehicle so it's fully operational. They crew this vehicle just as a World War II crew would have. This is one of Mike, raise your hand there. This is Mr. Mike Justin. Mike is, he's a fellow Irishman, by the way. Mike has done a terrific job. He's instituted a program here at the Museum of American Armor. We're getting dedicated tank crews, dedicated armored vehicle crews, and these are 3 of the 5 guys who crew this tank on a regular basis. And it's outstanding the work they do, both in the performance of the tank when we do our demonstration, the appearance, just as we saw the Marines before, they are precisely as a tank destroyer crew would have appeared in late 1944, 1945.
What a horrible and difficult job. So are you taking applicants for tank crewmen?
Well, we're always taking applications for volunteers here, Nick. Being a crewman is a privilege, and you get that privilege if you work hard here and do the normal work that we have to do on a regular basis. Again, this is I don't know if I made it clear, we're a 100% volunteer organization. We just have Mark Renton, who is our director, but all the gentlemen you see here, Mark behind the camera, myself, the gentlemen you're going to see we're bringing in the M48, they're all volunteers. So we all do everything. I'll be leaving here. I'm very privileged to do the narration here. I'll be cleaning the bathroom at the end of the night. This is what we do. We all work hard, and we all have our specialties, yet we also come together on any kind of job that needs doing.
Yeah, I see you're kind of rare. Most M18s I see, they put Chafee track on it, but it looks like you kept the original.
Yes, we're very fortunate to have those tracks. They came that way, and I think the sprocket with those tracks is the original type sprocket, Nick, the multi-tooth sprocket appropriate for that. And these are all steel tracks, you can see, but they're not as harsh. We talked about our blacktop and our concrete. These tracks really are not all that harsh on it. You can see some scuff marks here, but really no lasting damage to the floor here at the museum.
Yeah.
Bringing in our M48.
That explains why the audio has been cutting out again. You'll be surprised just how tight a navigated tank.
It is exceptionally tight. In fact, I'll tell you a secret. We have our display cases off to the left here. We actually moved. Expression being the better part of valor, we moved ours. But yes, this is Mr. Jeff Ryan behind the wheel of that tank. Jeff is another one of our volunteers. and an excellent tank driver.
So, about how many of your volunteers actually have military experience?
You know, Nick, I have never polled, but I would say less than half, actually. Probably, I'd say possibly a third.
Hmm.
So we're all driven, like myself. I worked right over there, and yet I knew when I retired that I was coming here. It's just all our volunteers have a passion for tanks, for history, for things mechanical. I love to deal with the public, especially school kids. That's one of the great things, one of the great privileges I have. By the way, there's Mr. Jeff Ryan there.
Hello, Jeff.
Jeff is the man. Jeff can drive it, everything and anything with wheels, tracks. I've been. You fly a plane, Jeff? I don't know. No, okay.
So obviously, running these things isn't cheap. So how are you funded?
Well, that's another great question, and kind of a not a touchy one, but a little difficult right now. We are a nonprofit, and we rely on the good graces of a lot of corporate sponsors and some very fine individuals. But now with the COVID situation, that's an iffy thing right now. So we're hanging on. We're hanging on because our payroll is so low with our volunteers. But it takes money to get the lights on, our gas, our heat, our cooling here. So it's difficult. We're a nonprofit.
I was going to say, just because it's come up in chat, you'll be opening with appropriate social distancing measures in place on July 31st, so about a week here.
Yeah, we're looking at July 31. We're still developing the plan. We're bringing our LVT in right now. Pick that up in a second.
Okay, you got about 6 inches on each side there.
Yeah, it's pretty close. And then the shots still across the
You'll
front.
be surprised. I mean, we get our 70-ton tanks to within 2 or 3 inches of each other in the motor.
Yes, these guys are darn good. That's Mr. Paul Rendazzo behind the controls of our LVT4. Paul is a master mechanic. Worked for the MTA here, serviced heavy vehicles, and Paul is just a whiz on these vehicles.
Black Horse, Cold Steel, just a guy in the chat. Okay, so they'll be opening up. People will be able to come.
Oh,
along.
yes.
You'll get payment from admission fees, I presume.
Well, to tell you the truth, Nick, we don't charge admission here for a number of reasons. We do ask for donations to come in, so we have a donation box when folks come in. And the 31st, we're opening. We're going to have reduced hours a week from this coming Friday. Those reduced hours, we're going to be open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I think last I heard 10 to 2. Normally our hours are 10 to 4. So we're going to experimentally look at that. We have to find out how many people were allowed in the vehicle or in the museum at any one time. So, and the protocols we have to do as far as cleaning the building and things of that nature. But yes, absolutely, we're looking forward to it. The 31st of July.
So you guys have a large catchment area. I mean, you are the closest tank museum to the grand metropolis of New York City, as far as I know. I don't think there's a closer one.
I think you're right. You'd have to go up to the Boston area and the Heritage Museum. There was years and years ago, there was a guy out on Mattatuck on the East End. He took his collection, though, down to Virginia. Of course, we had our Danbury friends. We had developed, fortunately, a working relationship with them. Very, very nice folks. And when it came time for them to close, we were the very lucky recipients of the bulk of their collection. Mr. Alberto, who is a principal up there in the Danbury Museum, is down here with us too. So,
and so to get there, you say you're in Bethpage. Now, well, a lot of people, of course, in New York City don't have cars, and you need cars to get over. Now, I can say that when I visited your museum, I took public transport from Manhattan.
Right, you took the railroad, Nick?
I took, Long Island Railroad, and then from the train station was like 5 minutes in the cab or Uber or something like that.
Right. Yeah, so there's a train station in Bethpage, Old Bethpage, and there's a train station in Farmingdale. We're kind of equidistant from those two, and there's really no public transportation beyond there to this building. But yeah, Uber or a cab is your best bet. By the way, some people may recognize the name Bethpage. Bethpage, of course, we was the heart of the aircraft industry from World War II until fairly recently, right up to the 70s and 80s. Grumman is right down the road, or the remnants of Grumman is right down the road here in Bethpage. And immediately to our east, just a short trip down the Long Island Expressway, is the remnants of Republic Aviation, where, of course, the Thunderbolt was made right up to the A-10.
There is a question in the chat there. Is it possible if somebody feels so inclined to donate money to you online?
If you would look at our Facebook page, Nick, or that kind caller, yes, we would gladly take that. We have a Facebook page, which I believe is called Military History Alive. Is that correct, Jonathan? And then also or failing that, the information email at museumofamericanarmor.com.
Okay. Another question from the chat. Do your drivers, do they know how to drive a tank before they start volunteering, or is it something that you have to have a training program and you train them up?
We do internal training. That's a great question. Do our military veterans, I don't recall any who actually drove a tank. So really it's in-house training. Mark Renton takes care of that. And of course our wheeled vehicles, which I think we're going to take a look at shortly, they're rather intuitive vehicles. They're heavy vehicles, but if you know how to drive a standard transmission and have a clean license, well, heck, they even let me drive one of them. So that's how easy it is.
What's the worst that happens if you hit something? You're in a tank.
That's right. Yeah, it's very funny. We take some of our vehicles, our wheeled vehicles, our M8s, our M20s, off-site here. So within a radius of about 5 to 10 miles, we'll go to parades, we'll go to various veterans groups and things like that. And I'll often drive an M20 or an M8, and we get there and people will say, wow, I guess when you drove here, you're driving on local roads, people got out of your way. And I just say deadpan, no. They're Long Island drivers, they're New York drivers, they don't get out of anybody's way, regardless of what you drive and how you're. They'll cut you off, no problem at all. As a matter of fact, most of the vehicles they're driving around here on Long Island, the SUVs, are probably as big as most of our armored vehicles.
How often do you, so you drive them routinely, but if I was a visitor and I wanted to come out and see these things running, would I have to pick a special day, or would it like any Saturday and I've got a good chance of seeing something rolling?
No, not on any particular day, Nick, unless we were doing some maintenance on a vehicle or cleaning the building, and so we had to move some vehicles. Your best bet, if you want to see a vehicle moving, is come to one of our special events. Of course, those are largely curtailed right now with the COVID crisis. But things like Armory Experience are a wonderful thing to do if you can swing that. We'll probably be picking that up next year. You have time for a quick explanation on that, Armory Experience?
We can do better than that. We even have a promo video.
Oh, okay. Well, let me give you a little background. What we do is it's called Armory Experience. It's developed over the years. The idea is that you, as a paying customer on the Armory Experience, are in a combat rifle squad in World War II, right after D-Day in France, June, July, maybe August, just before the breakout or immediately after the breakout. And you are in what would be, as a participant in the Armory Experience, we would put you in a vehicle. We're going to go over here, Dave. Perhaps in our CCKW.
Yeah, so you get kitted out as an armored infantryman, basically.
Well, yes, we put a helmet on you, Nick. We put a battle jacket on you. We do things of that nature. So, but now we're working with our living historians, which we just demonstrated before. So they're in their armored infantry kit, again, appropriate for right after D-Day. And we would put our customers in a vehicle. This would be one of the vehicles we use, our CCKW, the venerable Deuce and a Half. We would put maybe 10 people in this. We have, Dave, perhaps if you could rotate to your left, we have our M3A1 Scout car. That's another passenger vehicle that we'll have customers in. And surrounding you are our living historians, our armored vehicles, our Hellcat that you just saw, some of our armored cars, which are off to the right and left of this M3A1 Scout car. And they're manned by our drivers in period correct drivers' uniforms and gear. And again, our living historians are all around you. Our Sherman is with you. Our M8 is with you. Our ambulance sometimes makes an appearance. And the idea is, and you leave here, that you are in a time machine, Nick, and you go down that driveway, which you saw those vehicles before a short time ago, and you turn left and you head to France. And France, being we're very, very lucky here, I might have mentioned that we are on the grounds of the old Bethpage Village Restoration Nassau County Museum, which is really terrific for us because the Restoration Village is a collection of older homes from Long Island older homes that have been restored and moved to this location. They're sets or they're farmhouses, they're residences, they're stores, and they are set in a bucolic setting, farm-like setting, small town, village setting. And around that are heavily wooded areas with paths. And so when you leave here and you turn left, you head up into the restoration, we veer off into the woods and we head to the enemy occupied area. And as they say, stuff starts to happen.
Okay, so can we get Z to roll the promo on this, Zach?
Yeah, Tragic, you ready to roll the promo?
Okay, they got it. Thank you. Going to be doing the Armory Experience video.
Okay, so you got like 90 seconds to grab a drink. Of what the Armor Experience actually is. Now, they're not running right now, you say. You still have to set about those probably next year.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking, Nick. As you can see from the video and the description, really the whole thing works only because we have people close together, be they the viewers or our living historians. We call it an intimate experience, and obviously that doesn't fly right now. So we're doing some workarounds. We actually had a meeting this evening about doing a kind of a modified event on Labor Day. So we're looking at that. So again, people should keep an eye on our website, and we'll definitely be doing something along those lines in, I think it's September 5th, if I'm not mistaken, Saturday. That's our traditional tanker weekend. That's when we pull out all the stops up in the restoration. We get a big crowd. Anything with tracks actually operates at that time, including the M48 that you saw, all the other vehicles you saw. Our Sherman is up there. I don't know if you caught a view of some of our German vehicles. We're getting some, we just got a brand new replica Stug. We've had a Stug now for the last year or so. So the Germans are actually coming around now on our, for a while they had no armor at all. Now they're actually starting to duke it out with us. So far we're 86 and 0, but as far as victories, but now with the world of German armor rolling in, we're somewhat in doubt.
Are there any limitations? How old do you have to be? I mean, if I wanted to get this as a birthday present for my kid.
That's a great question. It is somewhat intense. It's really not terrible. Really, one of the limitations is size. In order for you to see outside the vehicle, you really have to be about 12-year-old or so. That's usually what we recommend, 12 and older. But if you're with your folks and your folks think it's okay and they want to pay the bill, we're amenable with that as well.
Fair enough. All right. Well, why don't we have a look a little bit around the collection to see you standing next to a dingo there, it looks like.
Yes, this dingo belongs to our vice president, Mr. Gary Louie. This is Pride and Joy, one of 3 armored scout cars that Gary has. This is a late model.
One at a time.
I'm sorry?
He can only drive one at a time. You should give one.
Right.
To somebody.
He's good, but yes, he can only do one at a time. This vehicle we've done a lot of work on, and it runs like a top. Gary takes us out quite frequently. I'm looking at these tires. I was looking at a description online. I think we have of this, and we call them run flat tires. And I was thinking one of the first jobs I had here at the museum was Mark told me to pull. I think we were doing a brake job in this. Mark told me to take the tires off the dingo, so I jacked it up and got all the lug nuts off. Lug nuts go all different ways on these British vehicles. If it's Wednesday, they go counterclockwise. If it's Thursday, they go there. I got all the lug nuts off, and I went to remove the wheel, and it would not budge. And I had been told that they were run flat tires. Well, sure enough, they were run flat tires because they were solid rubber. I'd say there were about 250 pounds of rubber on that wheel.
Wonderful. It's a fun little vehicle to drive, I'm told.
Yes, can we take a look inside, Mark? The driver's seat, of course, is on the wrong side. Slightly canted to the left. Hopefully up to the left here, where the driver really should be. This is for the Bren gun.
Nick, I don't think you or I would be able to drive that.
So, some of those small, but I have a challenge up in Ontario actually to see if I can drive a ferret. But hey, you guys didn't think I'd be able to get out of the M3 Stuart either, and I was able to do that no problem. So, all right, well, let's have a look over your shoulder then. I think it's a couple of Jeeps.
Yeah, we have a beautifully restored Jeep here. This belongs to Mark Renton, our museum director. Mark, we call him Mr. Jeep. He's a Jeep lover. He's a Jeep expert. Any of our viewers have any questions on Jeep? If you want to try to stump the expert, go right ahead. Mark built this Jeep. He's such a fanatic that he had a barn full of Jeep parts. And he put them together. We bought the sheet metal from the Philippines, I think. But other than that, everything on the drivetrain, everything in the interior is all original parts. And kind of it's a combo of GPW and MB, Ford parts and Willys parts. And that kind of it's kind of a good lesson for people. We talk about one of the ways the United States won the war. It was so successful in the war was because of compatibility of parts, ease of restoration, ease of repairs. And I know when the Jeep was made, when the Ordnance Department thought that Willys couldn't keep up, and they went to Ford to ask them to build Jeeps too, that one of the requirements was that every single part that Ford made had to be compatible with Willys parts. And kind of been witness to that. So this really is a good lesson because Mark has put parts from Ford together with Willys parts, and we have more than a Jeep. I've driven this Jeep on a number of times. Mark looks over my shoulder all the time. It's a fun vehicle to drive. One of the interesting things on these vehicles is on a Ford, you can always tell a Ford part because Mr. Ford, who is a rather creative character, I guess that would be a nice way of saying it. Mr. Ford on his own decided to put the Flying Ford F on every single part he made. So I don't know if you can come in here, Mark, and take a look. Here's a Ford bolt head on the grill. And if you can see right there, there's a Ford F. So everything Mr. Ford made, everything that came out of the Ford factory had an F on it. So we had a WAG, one of our
how simple they are. I mean, if you compare it to a modern vehicle with computer chip controls and everything else, and you look in that hood that you have open, it's something that is intuitive to understand and maintain.
Yes, everything's right there. Little flathead, the Ford, the four-cylinder engine. Relatively simple. Of course, one of the things worth looking at too, of course, is the slatted grill, or in this case, it's a stamped grill. Every Jeep made to this point from 1942, 1943. It had that slatted grill, first originally a slat grill and then the stamped grill. But every Jeep to this day, in tribute to the original World War II Jeep, still has some version of that slatted grill.
Somebody is going to ask, I know in the chat, about the angle iron at the front.
Ah, okay, another great question. Now, these are always add-on. To our knowledge, these were never built like this from the factory. These are always theater add-ons, so you'll see all kinds of variations. And this is a wire cutter. So if you're booming along your roadway in Europe or maybe the Philippines, and it's low light conditions early in the morning, the enemy stretches a wire across the roadway, and of course your hood will be down, it could do severe damage to the driver. So to combat that, these were theater add-ons. They're made of simple angle iron. They're braced well. And so hopefully this would either break the wire or at least deflect it away from the driver. That's a great question, because we were talking about this the other day, Nick. We have a lot of school groups come in here, and some kids were asking about it. And I had just had the day before a World War II veteran in here, and we were talking about the Jeep, and he wanted to see it. He was a messenger. He was a courier during the war in Europe. And I said, well, I guess you ever have any encounters where the wire cutter, you cut German wire, things like that? And he says, no, actually, no. He says, our biggest problem was with our own guys, our signal corps, because we would run into wires that were strung across the roadway, in no attempt to damage anybody, but because that's what you did. So you had telephone wires, you had telegraph wires, and they would just string them from the closest thing that was available, be it a fence post or a signpost or a church steeple. So these wires were running all the way across the road, and of course would do the damage just as well as a German booby trap. But the good old wire cutter hopefully would do the deed for you.
No, I almost had my head taken off in Iraq. A low-hanging telephone cable in Mosul. I'm looking behind me in the tank, and all of a sudden I feel this cable on my neck. Fortunately, it was still stacked enough I can get it off, but it's a viable threat. Okay, you got some staff cars next to you now.
We do. We have this also belongs to Mark. This is a 1940 Plymouth. You've seen the United States Army staff car. You can see our New York plate here. That's one of a kind. That plate's much in demand, Mark says. But he's holding on to it. You see on our bumper code. Actually, this is a staff car from a superior officer in the United States Army Air Force. See our bumper code, the 8th Air Force, 319th Bomb Group. And right next to it is its companion with the United States Navy. This is a 1937 Lasalle. And we have this marked as the Admiral's barge for the New York Naval Shipyard, otherwise known as the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
I love the spare tire mounting on the right-hand side.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Classic design. Not combat vehicle, though. I'm sure a lot of people just skip over it and they just go straight to the armor.
Yeah. It's a weird, interesting collection, interesting people. Yeah, check out the headlights, those bullet headlights. That's a beauty. Somebody told me the Lasalle, I'm really not much of a classic car guy, but somebody told me the Lasalle was kind of the poor man's Cadillac. It was a GM product and was made by Cadillac, and was a cheaper version of it.
Take your word.
Very quiet engine, luxurious vehicle.
All right, so what do you got next to it then?
We have next to it
every vehicle, but
here's a vehicle that WC-54 is the famous Dodge ambulance. This belongs to Mr. Jeff Ryan, who you saw operating the M48 before. Jeff keeps this in loving condition. We often see this in our Armory Experiences and our parades. I don't know if you could squeeze around the back there, Dave. Maybe we could open up the back.
That looks kitted out. When you're going in a parade, or I mean, if you have a breakdown, what's your backup plan if you have a breakdown?
Well, we always tell people one of our most important vehicles. That's a little dark in there. I don't know how that video.
No, it's coming out fine.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, great. So Jeff has it, you say, kitted out for litters and some period correct medical supplies. We have had to tow. We've been rather fortunate, Nick. We try to prepare these vehicles as best we can, particularly when we go out before any experience. But they are older vehicles, and of course, any vehicle can break down. So we have had to tow a few back. One of our most valuable vehicles is our 5-ton wrecker. I think we'll take a look at that later. That's the next Army vehicle. And we have our Diamond T, our 969 wrecker as well. But we've ingloriously towed things before with the towing strap and whatnot.
So back to the Armory, the M8.
Right, here's an M8. This came from Danbury. We call this. We have two very nice M8s. We call this the Danbury M8. You can see here we have no fenders on this, no rear fenders, which was not an uncommon situation in World War II. The sheet metal fenders were often taken off either accidentally or deliberately. Deliberately, usually because they would become caked with mud and snow, and often they use tire chains on these vehicles. So I can imagine having minus the skirts would make the tire chains on and off much easier. Dave is up top on the turret.
It is good condition in there. You see, you got the optics in there. The controls are all there.
Yep. Yeah, this is very nice, and again, a beautiful runner. This vehicle is top notch and a big plus.
And I think it's next to a T20, isn't it, or an M20?
It's next to an M20, and this is a vehicle that I drive quite often, and we use in the Armory Experience. And kind of in form following life, we use this vehicle in the Armory Experience, and in this vehicle we have our chief living historian and also our chief director for the Armory Experience in this vehicle, so they get a good view. So it's in amongst the regular armored vehicles, but this is where we're actually producing and directing the show, keeping things safe, keeping things on time. And of course, that's how this vehicle was used during World War II. It was a utility vehicle, but also a command and control vehicle as well.
So is it blank firing? I think that's propane. Is that a propane?
Well, another great idea. You saw the tanks inside, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I saw the hose inside.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have them camouflaged behind those bags there, Musette bags. And if you look up on top, our ammo can on the 50 cal, that contains a motorcycle battery, so that provides the power for the gun. And yeah, the oxygen, we kind of have it camouflaged there in that burlap wrap to kind of keep it low profile.
That's definitely one of the bigger modifications I've seen.
Right. So when this is gassed up and the electrics are on, that M2 will fire at the rate of a real 50 cal, big muzzle blast, whole lot of noise. And as I say, nobody gets hurt except possibly your eardrums, ear splitting. One of the
viewers caught the FV Fox behind you there.
Yes. And actually we skipped. So this is the third. This is the third vehicle in a collection of Gary's. He loves his armored cars, and of course, you know the British named their scout cars, reconnaissance vehicles, after stealthy canines. So we have the Dingo, we have the Ferret, and we have the Fox. And we're looking into the driving compartment right now on the Fox.
Now, is that completely street legal?
It is. It's completely registered. A great performer, Nick. This makes all our parades. A great performer on the road. We drive it right up to the gas station. This is one of the few vehicles where we actually go and get gas at the gas station. No problem at all. A head turner, but again, one of those vehicles that while it may turn heads, they don't get out of your way.
And that 30mm cannon is probably great for the school run. Drop the kid off at school with that.
Yes.
I'd love to be dropped off at school in that Fox.
Make going to school fun.
All right, let's move on down a little bit. We can't stay here forever. We've already run through an hour.
All right.
Your white Scout car next to another M8. It looks like. We
have an M3A Scout car we talked about. We have in our original M8, the so-called museum M8. Another great runner. This gun though is gassed up. The 37mm gun, I should say, in addition to the machine gun. So this 37mm gun has gas canisters as well. And when everything's connected and everything is clear, we'll fire this gun. And again, quite the crowd pleaser, big boom, big muzzle blast.
The video for the Armored Experience saw the M4 shooting. Would that have been with blank cartridges?
I think you saw, Nick, the M18.
Oh, the M18.
Hellcat.
All right.
Yeah, that's a black powder charge. That's one of the few guns that we use a black powder charge in. Big boom and a lot of smoke.
Gotcha. All right. So scan left. What we got left next to the M8? Or is there anything?
We
I know there's
have.
something. Oh, the Dragon Wagon. Well, we got to talk about
Right.
the Dragon Wagon and its chain drive.
Okay. Well, this is an M26A1. That's the tractor portion of this. An M25A1. When everything is together, that's with the trailer. This is the M26A1. That differentiates from the M26 in that this is a non-armored cab. But again, this is a fully operational vehicle. And I happen to have the owner right here with me, Mr. Dave Levy. So Dave is the expert on this vehicle. And I can relay questions to him, or we could have Dave answer your questions directly.
Well, if anybody in the chat there has some questions about the Dragon Wagon, but while we're waiting there, you have to show them the chains, the way that those wheels are driven.
Right, the chain drive. Yeah, and of course the very fancy lubrication system.
Yeah, just turn on the valve, and as the chain goes around, it drips.
Right. Kind of the original oil recycling.
So
I just don't want the
do you have a license to drive that on the highway as well?
No, we don't drive this on the highway, Nick. We do drive it here on the grounds of the museum and also up in the restoration. And it is quite the feat. Dave takes at least one, if not two, spotters with him when we drive. We most recently had it out when we did our July 4th parade, our deconstructed parade up in the Restoration Village. And he had the trailer disconnected from the M26A1. And even at that, it's a huge crowd pleaser, literally a huge vehicle and a huge crowd pleaser as well.
So where does he get a functioning M25?
Question is, where do you get a functioning M25? You've bought this over years, right?
So this actually came from the
Actually, I don't think they can hear you. Would you like the...
Yeah, we can actually hear him if he speaks up.
Oh, can you? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Dave.
this actually came from the Conley collection as well. So originally,
Nope, we've lost it. Never
We
mind.
lost audio.
Never mind. You have to hand him the mic.
Okay. All right, Dave was saying that this came from the Crunlin collection as well originally, but Dave has done a lot of modifications and restorations on it himself. Do you have any specific...
Why did he pick an M25? Of all the things he could buy, something that's 60 feet long, and he can't really drive on the public highway.
Well, because Dave loves everything World War II, everything. The bigger the better. They want to know why. What brought you to buy an M25?
it's unusual.
It's unusual, Dave says. Yeah, Dave is a master of understatement.
Not many out there that actually.
It was Dave's mission to get an M25 in running condition. The number of them is so few, and the number of actually operating 25s is far fewer. So that's his mission, and he has done that mission very well.
Does he own the Stewart that's on the back as well?
He does. You know, I could give you Dave. Dave, actually, we wanted to move on to the our M36, if you don't mind, and Dave is the expert on that as well.
The M36b1? Yeah, that's definitely worth a look because there are not many of those out there.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to transfer over the mic to Dave.
All right.
That is the...
Hello, Dave.
Should be right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
All right,
so,
let's wander
So
down
we're
then.
socially distanced here, but we share earwax.
Yeah.
Appreciate your sacrifice.
Yeah. So on the Dragon Wagon, which is the unarmored one, there's about a 10,000-pound weight difference. The armored one always had trouble with the suspension and springs cracking because of that extra weight. You can even see on here there's a gantry up top with the chain hoist, and there's that pincher right now that's clamped around one of the winch cable rolls. But that's how you'd pick up the tires, just to move them because they're so heavy.
Huh. Of course, it got room for the whole crew in there as well. So it's
There's a crew of 7 that goes inside there, yeah. So you get 3 on either side, and then one person would sit in the middle. The engine's right in the center. It's a 240 horsepower 6-cylinder engine, which is really kind of small considering the size of the vehicle. The pistons are, I think the pistons are 7-inch diameter pistons.
So it's all down to the gearing then, is it?
It's all gearing. It's all gearing. So it has 12 speeds, but the top speed is 26 miles an hour. That's 12 gears to go through. So you can shift 3 in the transfer case, 4 in the transmission. So when you add them all together, you multiply them, you get 12 speeds you can go through, but your top is 26 miles an hour. So on the back, this is an M16A2 trailer, which is the heavier duty trailer, which has a weight capacity of about 100,000 pounds, so 50 tons. And on it here, we have one of our 5A1 Stewarts up top. So the M5A1 Stewart's about 29,000 pounds. So we're about the third of the weight that this trailer can hold.
How many wheels all told in all that?
So the Dragon Wagon is an 18-wheeler. So there's 4 on the there's 8 on the back, and then the cab has the tractor has 10.
So how do you change one of those inside wheels?
So there's actually, if you look over here, there's pockets down in here, and you'd move that gantry into the pocket, and then you'd be able to lift the tire up and swing it out. So these whole trunnions, the whole trunnion of 4 wheels will come in and out. But you can adjust it by turning this nut down here. You jack up the back, and then you'd move the whole trunnion of 4 wheels in and out. They put flarings on the trailer just so you wouldn't hit, or they wouldn't get caught up underneath the wheels as you're driving to flare things away. So those flarings are removable. And then you drop the deck. So when you wanted to get something, a disabled vehicle, or even one that's not disabled, to get it over here, you drop the ramps down, and you would have to either winch it on or tow it on. It would go up over the back tires and then onto the deck up there.
Guy is asking on the chat about the tires. Are they? We were talking about solid tires earlier on the Dingo, but those are what, split rims?
So yeah, these are split rim tires. So you're right. The fronts are. I don't know if you saw. There's a difference on the fronts. They're bolt ones. These are split rim on the back. But they're 1424 tires, which with this tread pattern, the NDT tread. This NDT tread was specific. NDT stands for non-directional tread, because when it leaves a mark in the ground, you can't tell whether you're coming or going. And that was the whole point behind it. So the elbow of traction, but the design of the tread was kind of hid your approach. So yeah, these tires aren't made anymore, unfortunately, because the tires, I need new tires. They're pretty beat up.
So when you were doing the restoration, obviously, I presume this didn't fit in your garage at home.
No, actually, I bought this when this was one of the first vehicles to come in here, because you need the square footage for it.
Fair enough. All right, so let's have a look at the M36b1 then. So okay. I guess you should explain why a B1 is a bit rare.
Okay, so this is an M36b1. When you look at it from this aspect, what you see is an M4A3 Sherman, which essentially that's what it is. In late 1944, the government decided to up-power the armor that was out there. The Sherman tank guns, the 76, 75 millimeters weren't powerful enough up against the German armor, so they wanted the 90 millimeter gun. So the Fisher tank plant took 187 M4A3 hulls and converted them into M36b1 tank destroyers. So the difference between this and an M36 is the hull is very different in shape, but it's the turrets are the same. So this one is actually serial number 690. We have the original data plate for it that says it's an M36b1. It's actually in the differential housing. This is a cast differential housing, and if you can see it right here, is the serial number stamped in the differential housing as well. It says S690 on there. Gotcha. So yeah, the configuration is really almost identical to an M4A3 Sherman, except the ammo storage compartments are different. So inside, actually, we can get a look inside. This tank needs complete restoration still, but the ammo storage bins are laid out, and the hull is essentially completely gutted in there. I don't know if Mark, you can get up over the top. We can show you here.
People are wondering where the turret is. Now, I guess we should say it is in the process of being restored.
The turret's behind me, and I will show it to you in a minute. But looking inside here, you can see the ammo storage bins. These are just kind of laid in place. So the ammo storage bins, they would take the canisters of 90 millimeter ammunition to go under the floor. That's one of the main differences between this and an M4A3. Also up on the driver's, the co-driver sponson is where the radio would go. because the radios otherwise would go in the turret bustle, but in the M36 series of tanks, the turret bustle had ammunition in it, and we'll show you the turret bustle in a little bit. But this particular tank was in Europe during World War II. After the war, it was in the Yugoslavian army. The Yugoslavians had repowered it with a cylinder diesel T-55 tank engine. So that engine is much bigger than the Sherman GAA was that would originally be in here. So they had cut out the bulkhead, the firewall, moved it all forward. They moved the ammo.
Are you back? Have we lost you?
Lost microphone on you.
Oh dear.
Some fine details on the top of the hull here, but I think we lost.
Purring, but we've lost you, mate. Come back to us.
Okay, did you hear any of that?
There we go. There we go. You're back.
Just the last part as you were showing off the turret ring and doing some tank parkour for us.
Right. So did you hear about the turret splash being cut out and things like that?
No.
No, okay. I can.
You got as far as the ancient firewall being removed.
Okay, so that the firewall was removed and everything was pushed forward to accommodate the larger T-55 engine, the 12-cylinder engine that was put in here to repower it, which made it much better with performance, but they needed the space, so they cut out the whole firewall. They moved everything forward, including the ammunition bins. These are the original ammunition bins. They just had to be cut out and put back in place, which right now, this is essentially where they have to go. They're just laid in there. But then the turret splash I was saying, this is the normal contour of the turret splash. They had to cut it. You can see it's kind of torch cut along here. That's to accommodate the larger turret of the M36 series tanks.
So this is being restored on site where it is right now. So a visitor could see this M36b1 being restored.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, there's certain aspects of it that you can see. I mean, but this is where it is right now. Because everything has to be kind of fit and put back together. You know, there's of the 187 M36b1s that were made originally, there's only 6 that I could find left in the world. There's this one here. There's one in Fort Hood, Texas, in Killeen, Texas, at Fort Hood. There are 2 in Iran. There's one outside Wagon, Poland. There's an armor base there as a monument, which they brought back from Iraq. And there's also one that was that's in Iraq. So David Doyle has a book on the M36b1 that just came out, and there's a bunch of pictures in there of the ones that I've seen and been able to get in touch, contact with. But there's only 6 of them left in the world that I can find. So
that makes it more rare than the jumbo. I think there were 7 jumbos.
Right. Yeah, it's ultra rare. I mean, the one in Camp Hood is actually still has the Russian diesel T-55 engine in it. The one in Poland is actually original, but the engine's been taken out of it. I was there to see it actually. It had something explode inside of it, and a lot of the inside is missing, and it's full of mud and rust in there. The 2 that are in Iran are in. I have no idea what the inside looks like. They are in a museum in Iran, and the one in Iraq was initially it was it was part of a forward operating base Spiker north of Tirkut in Iraq. It was supposed to come back to the United States to go to Fort Campbell, to the museum there. They moved it into Kuwait, but then there were some political problems where it couldn't be taken back to the United States. So it was pushed back into Iraq somewhere. It's in the pictures of that one are in David Doyle's book, but that is the most complete and most original M36b1 that exists that I can find.
Until you finish with yours.
Until this one's done, right? And then, you know, just as a matter of interest, you know, if you look at the front here, this is a cast differential housing. This is where the final drives connect to the outside of it, and the transmission goes on the back. So when you're working on armor and pieces like this, you never know what you're going to need, when you're going to need it, what kind of spares to have. So in the back, if you're interested, we can show you one that we picked up recently. We just took it apart just to inspect the inside of it. But this is a Sherman tank transmission right here. This is the entire transmission. The engine's in the back. There's a huge drive shaft that comes up the front, which connects over here. The transmission would then go back on the back side of this, and this is your differential housing. So you can see over here the final drive mechanism. This is what the front turret sprocket goes on the outside of this, but these are the gears, and you got to look. This is what a Sherman tank essentially drive axle looks like. So the massive parts. But yeah, and then the steering for a tank, as you know, you steer with levers. There are these brake bands, and when you pull the brake bands, they tighten around the drums inside, and that's how you steer a tank, by locking up one tread versus the other. But this is actually a pretty unique view to get of the inside of a steering mechanism for a Sherman tank.
So, to what extent, because Shermans per se aren't the most rare vehicles in reenactments and so on, so there are spare parts out there. But to what extent, do new ones have to be manufactured versus taken off old ones?
So there's all sorts of stuff that sometimes you'll be amazed at what you can find brand new in a package for certain things. Still, 70 plus years later, you can find certain things brand new. Other things are absolutely impossible to find. Fortunately for this. Most of the stuff is Sherman based. The things that were not Sherman based are really hard to find. This is actually the gun for it. This is the gun that goes in the turret. We'll get to the turret in a little bit. But this is the 90 millimeter gun that you can see that would go into this tank. This is so much bigger than a 75 or 76 millimeter gun that would be in a typical Sherman. And you can see the size of it. You have back here is where your breech block would go in the breech ring. You can see the bore to go down. This is actually, the original one was 3 gun. This is an M3A1. The M3A1 had a different muzzle brake on it, and also has the bore evacuator to prevent the smoke giveaway.
So you're gonna put the armored roof on this one?
So this one actually didn't have the armored roof, but we can go over to the turret over there if you want to see. We'll take a walk over. So the turret's over here. It's up on a stand. Right now, but this is an M36 or M36b1 turret. So this whole back was added on. They needed this size of the rear piece as a counterweight to offset the weight of the gun up front to keep it balanced. So essentially, when the gun and turret are all together, you can spin this around because it's very balanced and very even. If you pop inside here, you can kind of come inside the turret, and you can see this is where the gun would mount in here. This would be your forward view. You have a place for your quadrant, place for your sighting equipment, a place for your flashlight to go in here. And in the back up in here, there are these 2 big ammo racks, and you'd slide your 90 millimeter shells in here. So you'd have them in here, and then those bins we saw before would be on the floor down here beneath us. And you'd open up the floor to get the ammunition out when you needed it. You put it in your ready racks when you were ready for it, and then you'd be able to fire away.
So how long has this been under restoration? Because I seem to recall I saw it 3 years ago, and you got a ways to go. What's your timeline?
Yeah, it's exactly the same as you saw it several years ago. It's got a long way to go, but it's been yeah, it's got a long way to go. I'm getting heckled by the crowd here. So.
As I'm saying, the museum is restoring your favorite tank. Shut up, take my money. So I guess there's go to the Facebook page. Kevin was saying earlier that there's a donation option on the Facebook page for the museum.
Yes. There's a donation option. Yes, that'd be wonderful.
Hop over. I think you got the M16 Half Track is over on that side as well somewhere, which is always a favorite of mine.
Yeah, we can come over here. So this is another scout car, and then up here is the M16 Half Track. So
it's always a crowd favorite when you set that one off.
So yeah, the M16 Half Track. Essentially the Half Tracks are pretty ubiquitous vehicles, and they're really versatile. There's all sorts of things that you can put on a Half Track. They were mortar carriers, they were personnel carriers, they were, you can put 37 millimeter gun. And then you have this one here, which is an M16A1, I'm sorry, M16, which had the fold down armor for the sides. So that's one of the big giveaways. You're looking at a Half Track, the notched and fold down armor. That's an M16 Half Track. And then in the back, you had the Macaque turret. So the Macaque turret held 4 50 caliber machine guns. Each gun could fire between 400 and 500 rounds a minute. So you go through tons of ammunition. There's a cannoneer platform back here where the loader would stand. You would have the gunner inside. He has his armor over here, which, you look at the thickness. This is 1/4 inch, and essentially all the armor on here is 1/4 inch space hardened. So only the outside face of the armor is hardened, but it's just 1/4 inch steel plate essentially. Mm-hmm. And then when you're in here, so you sit inside, you have joystick controls. You flip on the power,
Oh, that's so cool.
So you'd be able to move it around to get to, to be able to track airplanes or whatever.
And it
So
goes
initially,
around in a fair flip, doesn't it? I mean, it's pretty fast spinning.
it's pretty quick to get around. And actually, so people always ask, when you turn around and now your guns are pointing forward, how do you not shoot up the driver? But there were no computers back then. Everything's all mechanical. So inside the base of the turret of the M16 turret, there are little rollers and little leveling devices where when you come around, it actually has micro switches that shut off each gun as you go past. So when you come around, first the bottom, if you're coming in this way, first the bottom right gun will go off, then the top right, then then the top left and the bottom left. As you go around, then they start firing again. So but yeah, so now these guns, these are all set up with a gas component. So they, on the outside, it looks for real, but then you look inside. We set them up so you have propane in here, and really it just runs off a little little Coleman propane bottles. There's an oxygen tank in the back that runs up through a universal fitting in the bottom to feed oxygen up to the guns. And again, it's just a little spark plug and motorcycle coil to make these work.
Cool. Yeah, I would say it's the only military vehicle I've ever popped a wheelie in is an M16 Half Track.
Oh yeah.
So I had it in the wrong gear going up a ramp.
Oh, okay.
All right, so let's move around back again. We're kind of going a little bit behind schedule here, which isn't too much of a problem because this is all cool. Oh, you're back at the chain drive again. Okay, let's have a look.
Yeah. So yeah, we can walk around the other side. Where would you like to go next? Then I'll give you back to Kevin in a minute there. But
how are the guns triggered? Somebody's asking. Solenoids, isn't it?
yeah, actually, so inside there's I can show you real quick if you want to see it. Is that something you want to see, or are we running too short on time?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Let me hop up there and I'll have Mark pass me the camera. So this is actually really kind of just like a video game, honestly. So this is like when you sit inside the turret, you would sit down in here and you're kind of like tucked in this pocket. But right here you have your two handles, and this is what you're turning. So left and right and up and down. And on the back side is a trigger. So you'd flip this up, make your firing circuit live, and then you'll hear the solenoids. You can hear the solenoids firing right now.
Yeah, we can hear those. Yeah.
Yep. So the firing solenoids is what is actually triggering the solenoids for the gas guns to go.
Cool.
So when these are set up to fire at the rate of a real gun, so it's loud when we shoot it off.
And automatically you win the battle.
You hope.
Grand. All right. Well, let's move. I guess somebody, because I keep talking about the chain drive. Why did they put a chain drive on the M25?
So the technology back then, that's what was there. When you look at this, one of the things that I thought was really interesting when I started working on it is there's your differentials right here. So the way you power your wheels is just by that chain. And again, this is where you take your used engine oil, put it in here. This is how you oil your chain. But it was just simple. It was made by the Pacific Car and Foundry, which took a design from I think it was the Nunley company to do it. And there's the brakes are only on these wheels back here, these axles. There's no brakes on the front at all on here, which is unusual for a for something today's standards. The other thing, which is back then, they had brakes that were just based. They were air brakes. When you had air, you had brakes. When you had no air, you had nothing. So today's standards, you have spring brakes, where when you run out of air, a spring pops on, so you can't run a vehicle without air. You can't move it because the spring brakes apply pressure to the brake shoes. Here, when you run out of air, you have nothing. You're free falling.
Oops.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we'll kick you back over to Kevin. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Greatly appreciate it.
Kevin here. Okay.
So just for those of you that are joined late and are wondering what's going on, we are touring the Museum of American Armor. It's in Long Island in Old Bethpage. So you hop on the Long Island Railroad. It takes about 45 minutes. It is a public access museum, which will be reopening to the public at the very end of July. Keep an eye on their webpage and Facebook page. I guess we could just go to Google. What is the official website?
Pardon me. Official website, Nick, is museumofamericanarmor.com. And Facebook, I believe, is Military History Alive.
Okay, is that a Cadillac V100 behind you there over your right shoulder?
The .org is not the program.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been corrected. If I said Museum of American, I was incorrect. It's museumofamericanarmor.com.
Okay,
Thank
.com.
you very much.
All right, yeah. So was
Yes.
is that a V100?
It is, in fact. This came to us last year from the West Coast. It's M706. I think it's an E1 or the V100 Commando.
That's in pretty good nick inside.
It is in great shape, Nick, and it is a terrific runner. This is one of the vehicles that we are now taking on our runs we talked about when we go to parades or events that are, within a radius of 10 miles or so. We take this vehicle, and it's a terrific runner. It's people get quite a kick out of it. We have one of the largest populations of Vietnam veterans here on Long Island. And as I mentioned before, we are kind of World War II centric. That's how we started out, and that's how we maintain. But we have had a lot of requests from those Vietnam veterans to get vehicles representative of that period. And this is one of them. Of course, it was used for a lot for convoy escort during the war, as you were going to a remote fire base. And a convoy was bringing food or ammunition or whatever out to these fire bases. They were often targets for Viet Cong ambushes. And these are the type vehicles, usually military police in the Army would use to protect those convoys. Twin 30 millimeter, 30 caliber machine guns up in the turret.
Well, to an extent, they still use them. If you look at the 1117 Guardian, it is basically one of these that has been updated.
Correct, right. So the basis for a lot of vehicles that are still in use today, including guns, larger guns. One of the non-standing in Army use was the 30 caliber machine guns. Really didn't have penetrating power into thick jungle canopy or thick jungle type vegetation.
So you have it there parked with the doors and hatches opened. So as a visitor coming around, can you just stick your head in like we just did with the camera?
Yes, you sure can. We can't allow you to enter the vehicle, but yeah, that's one of the reasons we keep the doors open and the hatches open. We ask you to just be respectful and not touch things, but fire away with the camera, take a look all you want, and ask questions. We always try to have docents on duty, all of them knowledgeable to answer your questions.
All right, and you're next to a horizontal valued Sherman of some sort.
We sure are. This the original heavy duty acquisitions from the museum way back when, I guess probably around 2012 mark, 2010, around there. It's an E8 Sherman. As far as we know, it was originally a gun tank, 76 millimeter E8 M4A3E8 gun tank with, I guess, the T23 turret, 76 millimeter gun. At some point after its career as a gun tank, the turret was removed and was converted to a tank retriever. I guess that's an M32, maybe a B.
or something, yeah.
So that's how it spent the rest of its life with the Army. And then when it was surplused, naturally it was minus the turret gun. So someone in Europe, a previous owner to us, took the, as a tank retriever, it had the jib crane on the front, took all that stuff off, took the winches, very powerful winches are inside, out, and sourced a 75 millimeter or an early 75 millimeter turret and gun and plopped it on top. And that's how it came to us, and still remains in that state today.
Yeah. So for people watching, we're about 500. I think Fisher might have built 500 of these horizontal valued Shermans with a 75. They weren't common, but they did exist.
You're absolutely correct. And we were talking, Nick, about the invasion of Japan and the M42B1 outside. A lot of the 75 millimeter Shermans were thought of being sent to the Pacific for the invasion of Japan. And one of the reasons, and I'm sure your viewers know, 75 millimeter gun, although it didn't have the punching power that 76 millimeter gun had for anti-tank use, they didn't expect to encounter that type of problem in the invasion of Japan. So they were really looking for that high explosive punch. So therefore they They were valued and they were headed out to the Pacific. Fortunately, the war ended and they were not in use. Also, I understand a lot of them had been allocated to the British for conversion to Fireflies. But again,
Correct.
that was at the very end of the war, and they were not put to that use.
Yeah, lots of even on a couple of people commenting the EC8, that didn't require the 76. It was just a suspension, and people forget that EC6 was the gun. So it looks like you got one of America's great disasters sitting right next to one of America's great successes.
Good eye, good eye. This just came to us too, just this year, and just before the COVID implosion. In fact, we took possession of this at an empty museum. This is an M114. And you're right, not a great success, underpowered, had a Chevy 283 V8 engine in it, same engine I had in my 1966 Chevy. So underpowered, really was not a good over the road or developed or undeveloped road area. Very, very poor performance in that area, susceptible to mines, was used in Vietnam early on, I think 63, 64. ARVN troops used them. It's a reconnaissance vehicle. It's a scouting vehicle, kind of the little brother of the M113, and just as successful as the Sherman was in the M113, this not so much.
Yeah, I mean, not least if you look at the front of it, you can imagine going into a ditch and you look where the track is compared to the nose of the vehicle.
You know, that's very funny, Nick, and that's one of the first things before I really knew a whole lot about this vehicle. I mentioned we took it off the trailer. I came in and Mark was here, and we came in from Nevada, I think. It was one of these, ride-a-tank type attractions. That's kind of why we have the psychedelic, or it has that psychedelic paint scheme on it. But when it came in on the low boy, and even that, the trailer being so low, Mark drove it off. He came nose down to get it off into our parking lot. And immediately you could see when that nose came down, it was virtually kissing the pavement. And that was a relatively, it was an angle, but a relatively sharp angle. So,
Yeah.
but that became readily evident. So I kind of had to laugh after I read that, how that was one of the deficiencies.
With regards to paint scheme, you might want to have a look. It could be very faded, but there was an experimental paint scheme in the early 70s, I think it was, that looks very, very similar to that. I think only one brigade or one division would have used it.
Oh, really? Well, I take it back then.
So
I don't know whether.
I can't see the colors perfectly, and I need to get to my books. But there was a couple, like there was a digital camo scheme called Dual Text that was lots of little squares on the side of the tank. For example, a lot of people don't know about that either.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
I'll email Mike or Mark if I dig up the name of the thing.
That'd be terrific. We'd love to have that. I was doing a little research on it, and I was, a lot of these after they were left the theater in Vietnam, they were sent to Europe for that role, that reconnaissance role. They weren't loved there either. I saw a picture of one of these though, and it was a cavalry unit in Europe, in Germany, I believe. And in the background, this was the focus, an M114. Right in the back of it was an M20. And I was very surprised to see the M20 still in use at that period.
Yeah, the 114 always did have a long career in police organizations because the army didn't want the things.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I kind of skipped over that too on the V100. A lot of V100s, a lot of commandos went to after the use with the military, went to sheriff's offices and police departments.
Yeah. All right. So high-speed tractor now conveniently in your back shot there.
Yes. How about that? Yes. M4 high-speed tractor. The vehicle had one purpose, and that was to tow the 155 and the 8-inch and the 90mm anti-aircraft gun. We have this came from the Crunlin collection as well, and it came with the 155, which we have out front. Amazing vehicle. Has a seating back here, as our camera is showing you right now, for a portion of the gun crew, the driver and the co-driver. In the back is a locker for ready rounds. Not too many, but naturally a train would follow this vehicle with all the ammo bags and the shells and whatnot for sustained fire. But ready rounds were back here in the cabinetry in the back. Those differed a little bit, from my understanding, depending on the type of vehicle or type of gun that it was towing, be it the 8-inch howitzer naturally, or the 90mm gun, or the 155, which we have here. These vehicles saw a lot of use. One of the reasons these vehicles have survived to this point is because they were much prized after the war when they went into the civilian market in the mining and also logging operations. And we kind of suspect that that's what this guy was too, because we've noticed where the paint is chipped in a couple of places down here. And also I noticed once when we had the headlight guards open, you can see yellow paint in there. So I can only assume that at one point, when this was civilian ownership, with a mining company or logging company, they had painted it a high visibility yellow. You still with us?
We're right there. And I will say, high speed might not seem like 30 miles an hour, but I guarantee you, if you're doing 30 miles an hour while driving that thing, it feels pretty fast.
It would help if I took my mic off mute while you were talking. Is that a Diamond T behind you there, or is that another one?
It is. It is. That's one of Mark's favorites. That's a Diamond T 969. 10-ton wrecker, Mark? 10-ton? 5-ton wrecker? Again, this is one of those vehicles that doesn't really have the sex appeal of some of our tracked vehicles, our Sherman, our M18, but a vehicle that was indispensable to the war effort, much like that CCKW we were talking about before. And you had alluded, Nick, that the vehicles broke down, whether they were on the battlefield or whether they were in the civilian arena. And so a vehicle like this was essential to the war effort. And again, we had talked about before this. We bring the subject up to the school kids that come in here, how important it is that to the war effort, how the United States was able to repair its vehicles in a timely manner, an easy manner, compatibility of parts. And vehicles like this and Dave's Dragon Wagon were essential to that role, to get those vehicles off the battlefield, just behind, depending on the type of restoration they needed, kind of repairs they needed, to make those repairs. So these vehicles were indispensable. Along the highway, when the Red Bull Express was in effect, you couldn't afford to have a CCKW or a white or some kind of transportation truck plugging up the road. So these vehicles were always on standby to bring those vehicles off the road and eventually get them repaired, or at least get them out of the way.
Okay, so anything else that you really want to show off while we're there? Just because we are starting to come up to the 2-hour mark and don't keep you all there forever.
Well, we have our M5. This M5 had an interesting. This apparently was in the movie. I'm sure you'll recognize the movie Tank Girl. Well, I didn't. Somebody told us that. Kind of a cult classic.
Well, you have to use your imagination, but because by the time they were done with that Stuart, it looks nothing like a Stuart.
Right. It had hubcaps on it and all kinds of things I've seen online. So, but this is restored back. It's a great runner. It originally had twin Cadillac engines in it. We maintained that to the extent of General Motors that now have twin Chevy small blocks, and sounds like a hot rod and runs like a hot rod, as long as we can keep the tracks on it. So it's a great performer and a great crowd pleaser, our M5A1.
Yeah. And something that looks vaguely German.
Yes. This is this came to us last year from the Swedish War Museum. It is obviously a Tiger I replica, built on a T-55 Russian tank chassis. Looks for all the world, unless I'm sure you have your share of Tiger I aficionados on there and experts. But to the general public, looks exactly like a Tiger I. Not a great performer so far. We're still tweaking it. We have difficulty starting it and running it and braking it, but it's a monster. Very, very impressive when it's on the prowl. And really, we have this because we honor the veterans here in the United States, our military veterans, particularly in World War II. And to put into context the valor and the bravery and the ingenuity they had, having a vehicle like this compared to a Sherman tank or the M5 that we just looked at really puts that into context.
Especially a big cannon.
Yeah, the 88. It's a monster of a vehicle. We also have, this was the first of our German vehicles, and we have a Sturmgeschütz, which is a replica as well. That's built on the FV 432 British chassis. And we just got another one, as a matter of fact. I think Mark just brought that in out of the rain. So we have, our Germans are well prepared now in our Armory Experiences. They're a great crowd pleaser in and of themselves, the German vehicles. A lot of people recognize them. Oh yes, Dave behind the mask and the camera reminded me of the Kettenkrad too. Dave's building a Kettenkrad, and we hope to have that on the road soon.
That's and I've always thought that was one of those annoying things to maintain because each individual track link needs to be lubricated.
Yeah, Dave is writing Dave has rewritten, well, not rewritten, but republished the maintenance manual on that, and I think it's online now, available for sale. If you guys
For
are
anybody
interested.
who happens to have a K-Rad in their garage.
Right, exactly. He's not expecting big sales, but it's done. It's ready to go, and I'm sure, as you saw from Dave with his enthusiasm and eye for detail, you can be sure that it's 100% correct. We're kind of leaning on right now. You know, when we were a kid, if you leaned on somebody's car, you really got in trouble. We're leaning on we have our WC58 command car, which just came to us recently. It was very generously donated. Paint scheme, a little bit bright, but still a great performer. We have the gas tank out of it right now. It's getting boiled out, and I see it on the back bench. It's been primed up because it apparently had sat for a while and was not running that well. But we're looking forward to the debut of this vehicle and using it as much as possible. This will be a great over-the-road vehicle too.
Was it my imagination, or I didn't see more than one fire truck?
Fire trucks. Now, just like a Dragon Wagon is to Mr. Levy, the Mr. Renton fire trucks are Nirvana. He has 3 great loves. Actually, he has 4 great loves. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're behind it. Right. Okay. Well, this one's a building. This is a red one. This came from our hometown fire department here.
But
This belongs to the Army.
Museum of American Armor, why do you have fire trucks?
Well, because Mark likes them. That's the simple answer. We also have one in military paint, which further down the line I started to take you to that initially. It's a class 250 pumper, a 500 gallon per minute pumper, and it's in armed livery, and is a type of you would have seen on a post either here in the United States or in Europe during World War II. It's very close to, Mark says, very close to it. I got to tell you, too, one of the things we talk about here in the Museum of American Armor is how World War II really still impacts the United States. In fact, our founder and our president, Mr. Lawrence Kadish, he has a saying, and it's so very true, and that's World War II still matters. So World War II, here we are 75 years later. Obviously, the major impact during the war itself, but to this day, 75 years later, still has the impact geopolitically, from a social sense. So it really helped spur the civil rights movement, the rise of feminism. And one of the things it did, and we are right smack in the middle of suburbia here in Old Bethpage, is it spurred the growth of suburban Long Island across the country. We had the original Levittown here. And one of the things you needed in a growing community like that, a growing suburban community, was a fire department. So volunteer fire departments were legion here, and so actually still are on Long Island. And so you had a lot of these soldiers coming home, a lot of these veterans coming home, and they were all full of piss and vinegar still. They were adrenaline junkies, and they naturally gravitated to fire departments, volunteer fire departments. So.
That BA-64 behind you there, is that a survivor from Danbury as well?
It is. It is. It's really here just for safekeeping. Right now, we're not working on it. We're determining ownership, but it's here for safekeeping. And that's what it is. My understanding, you probably know better than me, Nick. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I understand they're relatively rare.
Yeah, that caught my attention earlier. I saw some wonderful lightning at the window as well.
Yeah, yeah, we really did. We just we got in with seconds to spare. We brought our LBT in and our Hellcat, and yeah, storms are continuing. They're really a welcome relief because we have had hot weather now for the last really drought conditions for the last 2 weeks.
Some of our late arrivals have just caught the Hellcat again, and okay. Can you go have a look inside it?
Absolutely. Could we get up top and see inside of the Hellcat?
Always seems to be a very popular vehicle with our players for some reason.
early days of World of Tanks, the Hellcat was kind of a notoriously overpowered vehicle, and it's still quite beloved, even though it's no longer considered that.
Oh, you have it completely kitted out.
Yes. Yes, and I say the Mike Justin, who I know you guys have been talking with, and Mark Wilson here. These are two guys, two of the five guys who take care of this vehicle, and have done an excellent job, as you say, kitting it out inside and outside. There's Mr. Justin coming up.
That leather looks absolutely brand new.
Yep. Yeah, these guys have done wonderful work. So there's Mr. Mike Justin. Mike is the driver of this vehicle, commander of this vehicle as well.
Guys on the chat, if you've got any questions to ask an M18 crewman, now's a good time to do it.
Yes, fire away, please.
Haha, left-handed loading, no less. Yeah, that breech block comes in really damn quick. That's a beauty. So people are commenting on the quality of the restoration, but I don't have any questions yet. So obviously your black powder charges there.
Yes, and they right, very small charge, relatively small charge, and these guys right down to the last detail, they'll throw the smoking shell over the side of the turret, and it lays there, just smoking, looking cool.
People are wondering, was it fitted with the 90? No, I'll answer that one for you. There were no M18s fitted with the 90mm, with the exception of 2 experimental vehicles.
Right, this is the 76mm gun. Interestingly enough, this my understanding is this gun was made by Oldsmobile, and of course the Hellcat was made by Buick. That's one of the things we stress here too. We talk about the arsenal of democracy, how the United States was able to transition from a civilian economy so quickly to a war footing, taking companies like General Motors, which were producing Lasalle and vehicles like that, and turning around and building tremendous vehicles of war like this. In fact, the gentleman who oversaw this project was a GM guy by the name of Harley Earl. And Harley Earl was an engineer, successfully designed and oversaw production here. And just a couple of years later, around 1950, 1952, he had another great success, and it was called the Corvette.
I knew that name from somewhere.
How quickly you can load and fire that M18?
How quickly, Mike, how quickly can you load, fire, and get another round in?
Probably easily 7 seconds. As far as we.
Okay. Mike is saying 5 to 7 seconds. We get a round off.
And somebody else is asking about the engine, which was, of course, the aircraft radial.
Yes, it was another radial engine. It's the 9-cylinder Continental engine. It's a T4, they're telling me too.
T4. So yeah, I mean, obviously you can't just get in and push the ignition switch. So what do you need to do to get that thing going in the morning?
Well, hey Mike, could you where you just like any kind of radial engine, you just can't cold start it. So on our LVT, the earlier Sherman, which we had out front with the radial engines, to avoid hydrolock, which happens with radial engines, the lower cylinders can often, if they sit for a while, collect oil in the lower cylinders, and if you try to light that engine off, you're going to do some damage to the valve train. You're going to break a rod, you're going to piston, you're going to do something to the valve train. So, Mike, we do 50 to 51, usually 1 for luck, right, Mike? We do 50 and 1 for luck, and I think we allow what, a maximum of 1 hour to pass by.
1 hour.
1 hour before we. So if it sits for an hour, we do the whole rigmarole. And what you want to do is with the 50 turns, you want to get the new guy, and you want to get you want to see him do. Yeah, right. Those old guys take a bit of whinges. So what we do is we watch him, the new guy, and when he gets up to around 45, we say, "Here, let me give you a hand with that." And we do the last 6.
Lovely restoration, I have to say.
Is
the museum still expanding? Are you still buying new vehicles?
Well, we're kind of on austerity right now. The 2 vehicles that came in recently, Nick, were already ordered, so we've paid for them. So we're kind of pulling in our horns right now. But we did get now the command car that you just saw, that great 58 command car, that was donated to us, so we weren't turning that down, and we're doing a little bit of work on that to bring it into shape. But right now we're kind of holding fast, and as you can see, if you look around, Mark, you're giving those great panoramic shots. We're kind of running out of room, which is a very, very good thing to do. You have to be a good chess player here when you are a volunteer at the museum. If you want to work on a vehicle, you have to move 3. So you always want to be a couple of moves ahead. If you know you're going to work on the high-speed tractor tomorrow, you're going to want to make sure that X vehicle gets out of the way. We line vehicles up for parades before we have an event too. It's very, very scientific. A lot of arguing, a lot of drawing diagrams, and it's a great problem to have.
Just so people can get a sense of scale, can you have a couple of the lads stand next to the M22?
Oh, sure. Well, now, is the M22 inside, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. Could we come down here, Mr. Mack? Can we have a couple of youngins? We're going to give a size comparison on the Locust.
And of course, you have it right next to the LVT4, which is probably the biggest thing in there.
So here's our newest Stugnik. This just came in from England. Haven't had a chance to shake this down yet. It literally just came in. So here are a couple of our strapping lads who are going to stand next to the Locust, give you an idea of the size.
Somebody's asking, what's the largest number of vehicles you've ever run at once?
Wow, that may be the 4th of July parade, which we just had a couple of weeks ago. And I would guess, what do you figure we had out there, Mark? You figure we had 30 vehicles on the road? Probably about 30, 33, 34. We only had about 10 or 12 drivers, so it was kind of like one of those quick change things where we would run a few vehicles, drive them behind back to the truck park, jump out, get a couple more vehicles, and drive them around. We tried to put them in groups. We had British vehicles, we had track vehicles, we had armored cars.
Another question from the field. Folks are wondering, you have the M18 is really fast. What's the fastest you've driven it?
Oh, wow. Probably too fast. We've gotten some rooster tails out of it. Mike is not here right now, but I would bet we have had, do you think the M18's been up to 30 miles an hour?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mark says, oh, yeah. And his eyes nearly popped out of his head. So I would bet probably maybe 35 then. It's easy to go fast. Wonderful, fun vehicle. Can we get a shot of the... Mark is going to give a quick shot of the engine, which is an interesting engine in the Locust. It's a Lycoming 6-cylinder engine, a boxer type engine, horizontal opposed cylinders. Same engine that was used. A lot of folks may be interested to know is, of course, it was Lycoming was an aircraft engine manufacturer. This was the same engine that was used in the O-47, the MASH type helicopter.
That I did not know.
That's super cool.
Okay, so it's obviously still pissing rain outside. Hope you all have cars and you're not stuck waiting for a bus.
No, we've all driven here. Thank you, though.
So you do your events rain or shine, right? When they're scheduled?
Yes and no. We have had a number of events. We had some what we call World War II Encampment, which is a joint event with Lila and the Museum of American Armor, and 2 years in a row. And it's a major event where they pull out all the stops, Lila. And we do as well. So we have an encampment. A lot of the guys literally camp up there. But where I'm going with that is 2 years in a row we had terrible rain, but we gave a show for the people. We're still cleaning the mud out of our LVT, believe it or not. I think 2 years later, somehow that thing makes mud. It not only tracks it in, but it somehow manufactures mud as well. So we try to have rain dates, but the use of the park is somewhat limited. So if we have a date, we usually go to some extent.
Fair enough. Okay, we're coming up on the 2-hour time. I think just to plug the museum a little bit more for anybody who's watching. If you're in the New York City area, guys, this is your museum. Where are you and how do you get there?
We are the Museum of American Armor, Nick. We are in Old Bethpage, New York. It's about a third of the way out on the island from Manhattan. It's about 30 miles. right smack in the middle of the island, right on the border of Nassau-Suffolk County. If you're not driving, Long Island Railroad is probably your best bet. If you are driving, you're coming in here. If you're coming in from the metropolitan area, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, it's really not a bad trip. We are right at the intersection of the Long Island Expressway and the Northern State Parkway, which are two of the major east-west parkways and highways here on the island. Other than that, Long Island Railroad, like you said, you did, and then an Uber or a taxi out to us. We are open, or will be open, hopefully, when we get rolling. We're going to be open on a limited schedule in the next couple of weeks. But when we get going, when we're at full strength, we're open Wednesday through Sunday, 10 to 4. Again, check our website as we start to reopen slowly and cautiously. But we'd love to see you here.
I really want to impress on chat, just as someone who's been to a lot of tank events. As cool as it is to watch this stream, thank you so much for doing it, Kevin and all you guys. I really can't stress how much you have to see these vehicles in person to really appreciate exactly what they are and what they represent, especially if you have the opportunity to see them running, like at one of the events that you guys mentioned, like your July 4th parade or one of your Armory Experience events.
Yeah, we can't wait to get back to the norm, and I'm sure we will. And we'll welcome you anytime. I want to thank Mark Wilson, who's behind the camera right now, and Mike Justin, who you met both these guys. They put this whole thing together, and it's such a pleasure to work with them, both as volunteers generally in the museum. And we have never done this before, but we might just do it again.
Well, don't worry. Most of the museums haven't either. It's a case of, okay, hey, we got this great idea, and then they're looking at us going, huh?
Well, thanks for the idea. It's really worked well, Nick, and it's such a great pleasure to have you and Zach here and all your crew. It's really been a privilege and a pleasure.
All right, so I'll be sure to let you know next time I'm up in the New York area.
Yes, please. Yeah, and send me that info on the M114 if you dig it up. We'd be interested in seeing that.
Oh, yeah. I did some Googling. It's called the Master Camouflage Scheme with 2 S's. MASSTER.
Okay.
And it's a kind of a light brown, dark brown sort of combination. And so if you can have a Google of that, so you can find some camo on an M114, that may be what they were going for.
Okay.
Seventh Army were the only folks to use it.
Okay. Yeah, that would certainly liven it up. So yeah, we'll take a look at that. Thanks for the tip.
All right. Thank you very much. Zach, over to you.
Again, thank you one more time to Kevin and all the wonderful staff and volunteers at the Museum of American Armor for allowing us this special privileged view into their operation. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for staying with us through some early AV difficulties, but I think the last hour and a half went really well. And we hope you all have a great week, great weekend, and maybe get out to see these guys once they're able to open up here at the end of the month.
Love to have you.
All right, folks. On that, we're going to get out of here. Have a great night, everyone. Safe travel home to you and all your volunteers, and we hope to see that M36b1 in working shape someday, huh?
You will. You absolutely will.
All right, folks. Have a great night. Thanks so much for stopping by.
You're quite welcome.